Hello and welcome to the Open Book channel. My name is Oleander, your designated open book. And although this is a bit of an ironic video to put out as soon as I've finally gotten myself together, working the VTuber model, updating the branding, I wanted to talk about how eye-opening the last several months have been, and that I don't think it's talked about enough how much physical health affects creativity. I was inspired to talk about this by the Cozy Creative, otherwise known by her pen name, Lydia Foxglove. I'll link to her video, How I Plan My Creative Life Around My Period and Why Perimenopause is So Hard, in the description below. As you can assume, Lydia talks about how different stages of the female menstrual cycle can affect you. Back in my day, sex ed and biology classes didn't really cover that. I don't just mean that they didn't cover it with much nuance, I mean that the general consensus was that talking about women's issues was uncouth. A lot of 90s kids still had to navigate their feminine issues alone because their mothers were either unwilling or uneducated in such things too. Despite being used as a means to generally dismiss women in any situation they're being perceived as too assertive by saying it must be her time of the month, any actual recognition that hormonal changes affected women in a meaningful physical way was still out of reach. Periods were a joke. I was unfortunately raised in a time and place where it was still very much disbelieved that menstruation could cause some women debilitating pain, and they were just seen as dramatic and lazy. So, as you can imagine, although we learned that there are intervals in the menstrual cycle, that there's an ideal ovulation period and time of bleeding, there was no education spent lingering on technical terminology about the nitty-gritty. And I truly don't believe that I ever heard terms such as the menses, follicular, or luteal phases until Lydia's video. I would highly recommend watching it, even if you're not a woman, just to acquire some additional context and empathy for the female condition. Lydia talks about how each phase differs, what's happening in the body and how it affects women, relating it to how she ultimately plans her job as a full-time author around when she will be feeling focused. Hormone levels can quite literally make you more or less creatively inclined because it does affect your brain chemistry, and creativity requires thinking, despite what Gen AI defenders want to believe. I'm not just here to talk about the plight of biological women, though, because what I've experienced, although certainly related in some way to my physiology, is, well, I'm neurodivergent. For everyone who may not know, the term neurodivergent is not technically a diagnosis, although many diagnoses are neurodivergent. In its basest definition, it simply refers to someone whose processes or learning is atypical. It's actually a non-medical umbrella term, which is why it's now so intertwined with actual diagnoses such as ASD, ADHD, OCD, bipolar, even dyslexia. But it can even include people who've suffered various traumas which manifest and cause a structural depart from what's considered neurotypical. I am not a medical professional, but I have spent the last year on a special interest deep dive, and my life has started to make more sense than ever before. It's been an overwhelming journey. And even if you are someone who does not validate self-diagnosis, I believe I am low support needs autistic. If you've read my memoirs and still don't recognize the glaring examples of it in the ways that I describe things, I, at the very least, have some degree of complex PTSD from what I went through in early adulthood. Although I've been like this as long as I can remember, the symptoms of both autism and CPTSD can present the same. People are often misdiagnosed between the two, but at the same time, undiagnosed autistic adults canonically experience CPTSD from that lifelong experience of being misunderstood and coping. Suffice to say, I have finally admitted to myself that I'm neurodivergent, and with that, I have started to recognize some of my traits as symptoms of such. Up until my 30s, I was just convinced and gaslit into believing I was the problem. I'm just lazy, I'm not trying hard enough, I'm making things up, so on and so forth. Which, like I explained earlier about general mentalities toward the effects of the menstrual cycle, it didn't give me the validation to allow for the possibility, or tools to understand, how that might actually physically affect me. Luckily, more coincidentally, due to a gap in work demand, I took the year off to run my business providing publishing services rather than returning to my previous blue-collar position, and it became apparent just how much my internal neurological fluctuations affected my ability to perform and be creative. Like, when I'd have a long day or work week doing physical labor outside, socializing, problem solving, it was never a question of why I couldn't find the brain power to do creative things. I was understandably just exhausted. I'd tell myself I didn't get any writing done this week and that's okay, because that was not a physical limitation in me, it was a physical toll of the job performance, you know? But since, for the last year, the only limitation I've had is me, my own body, I've been able to recognize what that actually looks like. I provide publishing services for fellow indie authors. Depending on what they're looking for, that could be as light as a beta read, or I'll suggest edits to line structure, comment on plot pacing. I even do book covers and interior art. But the really taxing service is the peer editing that I do. I need to lock in when I sit down to do that so that I don't miss something. And I was finding, more often than I would like, that I quite literally could not perform that. Not just to the standard that I would prefer, because I get it, like, people with desk jobs have to show up and be consistent more than they have to wow the boss with speed or efficiency. They just have to show up. But I still, even knowing that, like, physically couldn't. I spend so much of my days tired. I get drained so much quicker from doing small other things, and sometimes I just wake up a nervous mess like I didn't sleep that much at all. When I was no longer pushing myself to perform at a physical job, I was suddenly struggling with the spoons theory, which is a metaphor posed by Christine Miserandino to explain to someone able-bodied what it's like managing one's limited energy. I've had to admit that I struggle with an as yet formally undiagnosed but very real impairment, and pretending that it doesn't affect me as much as it does doesn't make it go away. But there I was, first thing in the morning, sometimes like well rested, fed, hydrated enough, coffee in hand, above all, eager and willing to do the work. I typically get excerpts in drops that are roughly 5,000 words, because that's easier for the writers to then address and edit instead of it being the whole manuscript. For my primary client, that's always just about 2 chapters. And sometimes I'd get through 1 chapter and my brain would be shot. I wouldn't call it attention span because I was still fully engaged with the thing that I was doing, but I just couldn't process what was in front of me anymore. Reading was hard. I'd have to go over a sentence several times and still not be able to internalize or identify what was actually wrong with the syntax, even if I knew that something was off. I would struggle for 10 minutes to rephrase something and still not get it right, when other times that sort of thing could come super easily to me. Some days I would sit down in the morning first thing, open the Word document, and not even be able to try because the head fog was so bad. And at that point, I've had to admit, it's not a matter of not trying hard enough. There is some physical barrier that I am hitting, entirely out of my control. If I cannot even read, I cannot work. And tormenting myself by trying to push through anyway is just putting strain on a system that's already struggling. It ended up being a lot more effective to take the time to rest and try again later, because whatever I did manage to do while in a state of head fog would need to be so heavily revised later that I wasn't really getting anywhere. I was showing up, but I wasn't making progress, and that doesn't really add up to anything when you're not getting paid by the hour. Beating myself up because I wasn't on the grind set didn't change my capacity to perform, it just made me feel bad that I wasn't. It's been a sad realization that even when I'm given all the time in the world, and I'm able to work at the start of a day, and the whole day is just for me to do the thing that I want to do, there's an expected cap of when my cognitive function is going to wane. I gave it my best shot, and I actually physically cannot do this full time, even if I want to. And I did. I do. I tried. When I was younger, I came into the writing scene when there was a lot of advice and judgment that if you didn't write every day or hit a certain word count, you weren't a real writer. And the imposter syndrome that inspired was hindering. Even when I was young and naive and had wild aspirational dreams, I knew I couldn't meet those standards. And now, I know I can't. However, I'm really glad in today's day and age that conversations about mental and physical health are coming into the conversation for work cultures. Sometimes a creative job is the only thing that people with chronic illness or disability are able to pursue, and far too often, there's the sentiment that writing or art isn't real work. We're just having fun all day, doing what we love. And as much as we do love it, we also can't show up to work like a regular 9 to 5 where the primary requirement is that you're just there. Obviously, the same can't be said for elite jobs, like a surgeon, because you don't want them showing up to cut you open when they're feeling groggy, but you can't phone in creativity either. When your brain won't produce the spark that you need, sometimes there's nothing to do about it. And that leads a lot of creatives to experience self-doubt and a lack of worth. To be entirely reasonable, not everyone is capable of doing every job. Even though some people would like to think creative fields are something anyone can do, they're wrong. There is as much a limitation in one's skill and dedication as there is for their mental and physical health. One particular task is not equal effort across every human on the planet. And unfortunately, as much as I would love to just write and edit and design, it seems like I'm really only capable of giving that a part-time's worth of effort. Whether I like it or not, currently, that full-time dream is out of my control, even when I'm the only factor in consideration. And I need to give myself grace for that. All of us creatives do. Be kind to yourself. Do the best that you can, and that has to be enough, because putting yourself down for not doing more doesn't help anyone. Doing anything creative is a miracle, and you should always be proud of yourself for that. I hope this was validating to anyone who's particularly struck by female cycle changes or has to struggle through their own physiology in any other way. Getting things done as quickly as you might like, or as quickly as society expects you to be able to, is not nearly as important as getting it done at all, however long it takes. Sometimes it's just not the right time, but the time will come eventually, and that's when you'll need to have taken care of yourself so that you can grasp the opportunity fully. Thank you for watching. Please let me know in the comments about any mental or physical limitations that you face to your creativity, and if there's any ways that you've found to help manage it. Make sure to check out the Cozy Creatives channel, and if you like this video, please like and subscribe to mine too. Okay, bye-bye.